It was a bright sunny morning at the Likoni Channel in Mombasa, Kenya. The Indian Ocean sparkled under the golden rays of the sun, and the air was filled with the usual hustle and bustle of commuters waiting to board the ferry. Among them were workers heading to their jobs in the city, school children laughing as they clutched their backpacks, and traders with their goods packed in carts and sacks. It was just another ordinary day, or so it seemed. The Likoni ferry had always been a lifeline for the residents of Mombasa and its neighboring regions. It was a bridge across the deep blue waters of the Indian Ocean, connecting the island city to the mainland. On this particular day, 2 ferries were operating, shuttling passengers and vehicles back and forth across the channel. Everything seemed to be going as planned until disaster struck with an unimaginable ferocity. At the mainland side of the ferry terminal, vehicles queued up to board the ferry. Among them was a white and green Matatu, a 14-seater minibus often overloaded with passengers and goods. The driver, a young man named Ali, was known for his daredevil driving and tight schedules. This Matatu was packed to the brim, with 18 passengers squeezed into seats meant for fewer, their laughter and chatter masking the tension of the overloaded vehicle. As the ferry docked and passengers began boarding, Ali's Matatu inched forward, ready to take its place among the vehicles to board. Suddenly, a loud screeching sound pierced the air. The Matatu's brakes had failed. The Matatu, now a runaway missile, accelerated uncontrollably toward the edge of the ferry ramp. Panicked cries erupted from the passengers inside as they realized what was happening. Onlookers shouted and waved their hands frantically, trying to warn the driver. Ali, gripping the steering wheel with all his might, struggled to regain control, but it was too late. The Matatu hit the edge of the ramp with a deafening crash, sending sparks flying. It ricocheted off the metal barriers, flipped over, and plunged into the deep waters of the Indian Ocean. The scene that followed was nothing short of pandemonium. Passengers on the ferry and those waiting on the shore screamed in horror as the Matatu sank rapidly, bubbles rising to the surface where the vehicle had disappeared. Within moments, bystanders sprang into action. Some dove into the water, hoping to rescue the passengers trapped inside the sinking Matatu. Others called for help, their voices trembling with urgency. The Kenya Coast Guard and divers stationed near the ferry terminal rushed to the scene, deploying boats and rescue equipment. Underwater, the scene was harrowing. The Matatu had landed on its side, trapping passengers in a tangled mess of seatbelts, seats, and shattered windows. Murky water filled the vehicle as terrified screams faded into silence. The rescuers worked tirelessly, smashing windows and pulling out as many people as they could, but the swift currents of the Indian Ocean made the task nearly impossible. Hours later, the Matatu was hauled out of the water by a crane, its battered frame a grim testament to the horrific accident. Of the 18 passengers on board, only 5 survived, rescued by the heroic efforts of divers and bystanders. The rest had perished, their bodies recovered from the depths in a somber operation that left even the most seasoned rescuers in tears. The survivors recounted chilling tales of their final moments inside the Matatu. "It was like a nightmare," said Aisha, a young woman who managed to escape through a broken window. "People were screaming, praying, and trying to get out. But the water came in so fast, I don't even know how I survived." The tragedy sent shockwaves across the nation. News of the accident spread quickly, and the Likoni ferry terminal became a site of mourning. Families of the victims gathered at the shore, their wails of grief mingling with the sound of the waves. Flowers and candles were placed near the terminal as a tribute to the lives lost. In the days that followed, the government launched an investigation into the accident. Questions were raised about the safety measures at the Likoni ferry terminal. Why were vehicles allowed to queue so close to the edge without proper barriers? Why wasn't the Matatu inspected for mechanical issues before it was allowed to operate? These were questions that demanded answers. But for the grieving families, no explanation could bring back their loved ones. The tragedy also sparked a nationwide conversation about road safety and ferry operations. Activists called for stricter enforcement of vehicle maintenance regulations and better safety protocols at ferry terminals. Meanwhile, the community rallied together to support the survivors and the families of the victims, organizing fundraisers and counseling sessions. The Likoni ferry accident remains a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of safety in public transportation. For those who witnessed it The sight of the Matatu disappearing into the ocean will forever be etched in their memories. And for the rest of us, it serves as a stark warning. Safety should never be taken for granted, whether on land or at sea. As the sun sets over the Indian Ocean, casting a golden glow over the waters, the ferry continues its journey, carrying passengers across the channel. But for those who lost loved ones on that fateful day, the ocean is no longer just a lifeline. It is a grave, a silent witness to a tragedy that will never be forgotten.